Good afternoon, friends and neighbor in Willimantic. As you can tell, this is not Jeff. He's off on vacation, so this is Peter. I'm sitting in for him today, and we're going to go in a little bit of a different direction. So, give you an update on a couple things about me, which will make this next 25 minutes make a little bit more sense. I'm a veteran, and I served in the Marine Corps, and the month of August is kind of an important month for a couple of reasons. So we're going to talk about the goods, the ups and downs of what happened in August. We are going to talk about what happened August of last year, and we're going to talk about what happened in August of 1990, for those of you who remember. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on that. We're going to separate the politics from the veterans, from what was supposed to happen and what actually happened. So let's get into that. If you'd like to call in, you know the number, so please do. So we're going to start with a year ago in August. We had one of the most difficult time periods in our modern military history, and that is when we were supposed to orderly and sequentially leave Afghanistan. We'd been there for 20 years. We fought the fight. We all got to the point where it's like things aren't changing. The Afghanis needed to step up and take control of their future, step up and defend their own country. We had done everything we could to drive out, the terrorist organizations that were in there, and the plan was made. And I'm not going to comment if it was a great plan or not such a great plan, but let's just talk about how it was executed. Because from a military background and with a logistics background, there are ways to do things. And that's what we're going to talk about, is we did some things that we can actually go back and look in history as to where the parallels are with other conflicts and other wars, and some that worked and some that didn't. So let's take a look at Afghanistan and in our timeline of when we left, both the messaging, the operations, and what it meant to our current day veterans that served in Afghanistan. So we go back and we look at our timeline, and it was back in 2020, hard to believe, 2 years ago already, 2 years plus, where we said, it's time. We'd been there for a significant amount of time, put a lot of treasure, a lot of blood in the dirt over there, and we said it's time to make a change. We had laid out training. We have worked with the Afghan army so they could step up and take over and be responsible for their own country, to do what they needed to do to protect themselves. But most students of history will know that Afghanistan is very tribal. It's very, very separated. It's not a unified country, so things run differently there. So there was more to that work than just getting a centralized military up and running. So a lot of things happened that were decentralized. So we made the agreement, which was surprising into itself. Back in February of 2020, the U.S. and the Taliban signed an agreement that set the terms. Part of the deal was we're going to leave. We're going to leave in 2021. And there were numerous conditions. Most of all, no major attacks on U.S. forces as we're trying to get out. The Afghan military was going to step up and do what they needed to do, and then we would leave, and then everything would be turned over. There were naysayers on both sides. There were supporters on both sides. Needless to say, as things started to move forward, and you look at the date, you say, well, that was February of 2020. As we all know, we get into the summer and fall of 2020, and it was very evident that the Taliban, surprising, were not going to hold up their side of the agreement. They started to do attacks. We had a significant number of forces there, and the decisions was made, how do we mitigate that? How do we protect our forces? How do we get out? We all know what happened in November. We had a change in leadership And of course, when we have a change in leadership at the highest office, things change. So we had new people coming in, and then things just started to change even more dramatically. And again, I'm not saying one political party was right and another one was wrong, because really what we're looking at is how things were done. That's the essence of the conversation here. So we still had attacks going on. We still had Americans being killed. We still had bombings, IEDs, etc. But at the same time, we were trying to move a significant number of our assets out of that region. And you think about that for a minute. It's kind of like moving. If you think about if you've lived in your house for 20 years, how much stuff do you have? And if you're going to move out and take everything with you, how long does it take to get all that organized and out? And now you do that on a huge scale. That's in an entire country. You can start to get your head around how large of a job that is. So it's really significant. As we're trying to move all those assets out, we're continuing to reduce the force. So what ended up happening was the Taliban saw the opportunity. They started to press, and they pressed hard to take the advantage. Clearly, the deal was not kept on their side. There was pressure on local military. The Taliban were buying people out, so people who were in the military ended up having to move to the other side because their lives or their families were threatened. So there's a lot of pieces of those puzzle that's moving on. Needless to say, we get into 2021. So the original date for the complete withdrawal was May of 2021, but for whatever reason we didn't make that timeline, so that got pushed off. Taliban says you guys broke the rules, so we're not going to follow the rules. No one expected that the Taliban would take over provinces as fast as they did. Needless to say, when it got into July and it got in toward the end of July, they were taking over provinces at a very rapid rate. Then things started to happen. August of last year, August 15th. So let me set this up one more time. So we have Kabul, and then we have the Bagram Air Force Base. So they're about 90 miles apart. The Bagram Air Force Base is a little bit up north. Kabul is a little bit farther south. Where Bagram is where we had our embassy. We pull those people out. We leave perhaps one of the most secure bases in the world. So we leave there, the base that could provide support, security, protection for Kabul, but instead we left that military sitting out there on an unsecure airstrip, and then when they started to pull out, I think we all know what happened. We fled Bagram. We left with our air assets. We still left a lot of assets on the ground. Thousands of bad guys were let out of jail, and all of a sudden, 10 days later, we tried to get out of Kabul, and as we all know, there was a terrorist explosion that killed 13 of our service members. 13. So we all know that picture of those large transport planes lifting off the ground and people falling from the sky. So again, not talking about the politics, talking about the logistics, talking about the operation side of it. So leaving in such a disorderly manner, leaving without having protection for those people on the ground, cost the lives of a lot of people. Last year, there was a lot of pain and suffering. A lot of our veterans who served over there really were feeling hurt. It impacted them in a very large way. It was a large, not just a sense of loss, but a sense of loss of honor. I know after the bombing, a lot of us locally, we were very angry, very frustrated, very upset. A lot of veterans, especially those who served in Afghanistan, were very exasperated, didn't know what to do. Locally, a bunch of us said we're going to do something, and one of the guys in town who does a lot of work out, works with the military, helps young men and women get into the service, helps them get in shape, runs a really great program for them. He said, I'm going to run 4 miles. So if you like the weather today, that's what the weather was a year ago on August 26th. Might have been the 27th that we actually ran. So I said, we're in. And some of us weren't in great shape, but we got out there. It was 95 degrees, hot as could be. And we went out and we ran. We ran from his place. We ran up to the Vietnam War Memorial. We had a little bit of a ceremony there to remember, to pay respects. And then we ran the other 2 miles back to his place. Yeah, it was hot, but that was the only way that we could manage our frustration, our anger, and also to run to honor those who had died. About a month later, those folks came home. They came home to be buried with honors. And I was able to attend one of the funeral services that happened up in the Andover, Lowell, Massachusetts area. And it was good to see the number of people who showed up, fellow veterans, veteran service organizations, to pay respects. A very large family was there, and that's what they wanted. They wanted their daughter's name to be remembered. They wanted us not to forget. And that's the reason we're talking about that today, is don't forget the fallen. Not just them. Let's not forget all the other people who lost a limb or more than one limb, or have PTSD, who are scarred externally and internally from the service that they gave to our country. Yeah, it's an all-volunteer force. It's been that way for a long, long time, decades in fact. But when people do sign up, they want to know that the country, their government, their leadership is behind them 100%. Give them what they need to do the job. And I think from a military perspective, we learned very quickly which vehicles wouldn't sustain IEDs, and we improved on those. They learned very quickly which flak jackets didn't help, and they upgraded those. So there was a lot of things that happened very, very quickly during the early days of the conflict. And in the end, we have a much better fighting force with better equipment. So a lot of things were learned. But back to our veterans, the ones who are suffering. You know, for a number of months after that bombing, veteran suicides went up quite a bit. A lot of them felt very, very betrayed, hit them very hard. And I just want to make sure that we all remember those veterans. There's a lot of ways you can do it. There's a lot of things we can do. So I want to separate the veterans who served, the veterans who are suffering, the veterans who need our help from the politics. I'm not here to talk about which political party was right or wrong. We go back and let's see, that war covers what? 1, 2, 3, 4 presidents. So there's enough to point fingers left and right, up and down. We're not going to do that here. But we're going to talk about the people, the brothers, the sisters, the friends, the neighbors that went and served. My 2 sons served. Between them, those 5 combat deployments. So they've been there. They did that. They were very frustrated, very aggravated, because we all knew it was coming. When we pulled out of the base, the Kandahar base, we said, that is not good. It is really not good. So that's really kind of the red light that went off, and we knew things were going to be tough. So we want to make sure that we take good care of our veterans. And there's a lot of veteran service organizations. There's a lot right here in our neighborhood, and you may not know them. But if you want to do something to help veterans, if you know of veterans, we have a local veteran coffee hour that happens. Right now it's happening at 44 Hop out in Stores. We're looking to get a veteran location here right in town. Right now, tentatively looking at the old senior center, which is up by the ball field. So that's probably a bit away before that gets renovated and updated, but hopefully that can happen sooner than later. Also out in Chaplin, there's a place for veterans who may not have a place to go, maybe have a family, maybe they're in need, but it's called Veteran Base Camp. So that's an organization you can reach out to if you can support them financially or with whatever kind of donations. I know they would appreciate it. For other veterans that maybe just want, they want a place to go hang out or learn a trade or help with a resume, there's another organization that's out in Norwich, right next to Dodge Stadium. In fact, it's 2 buildings, what would that be, west of Dodge Stadium, and that's called Veterans Rally Point. You can find it very quickly online, but they have a full gym, brand new gym, fully loaded. They have a climbing wall, top of the art equipment in there. They do cooking classes, pottery classes, woodworking, mechanicals. They also have support groups. So there's a lot of things that you can get if you're a veteran and your family. They have a place for the kids to hang out too. So if you want to bring the kids, there's a place for them. You can put a movie on for them, but it's a great place to go. Give them a call, go down there, say I'm a veteran, I served. They'll get you in, give you the tour. They'll help you in any way they can. And if you're looking for a job, they do a great job with resumes and helping you, get to that next step in your life. So if you know a veteran, if you are a veteran, don't feel you're alone. Yeah, we took a tough blow last year, and we still talk about it in our house a lot because we don't like how it went. It's not just the what, but it's the how it was done. And it's a nightmare, and it's one that we still can't explain. There's a lot of people suffering. We scratch our head and just say, for all the brilliant minds that are in the Pentagon, no one's been fired. No one's been held accountable. And I think that's probably one thing that a lot of veterans would say, if that happened in my command, if I did something that I really messed up on, heads would roll. And I think a lot of veterans just say, we'd like a little accountability. That's all. But no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to take any responsibility or accountability for what happened. And that's really too bad. I think that would go a long way for veterans to say, all right, you guys messed up. We'll move on to somebody else who can maybe try to give us a chance to maybe heal and a chance to maybe do things a little bit better. So there was a high cost to both wars, not just the Afghani war, but also to the Iraq war. I think you've seen the advertisements on Tunnel to Towers. You see a lot of these guys. There's Houses for Heroes, Homes for Heroes, where they build these homes for the guys who have lost limbs or need significant adjustments to their house to compensate and adjust for their new world they're living in. These guys still have a lot to offer. The courage that they go through is absolutely incredible. I had a chance to speak to a young Marine corporal who was now a Medal of Honor recipient. I was talking to him, and he was telling me, he said, I didn't even think I was going to make it. But he said he's had, like, at the time I met him, he said, I've already had 17 surgeries. I've got more to go. They had to reconstruct his jaw. Then they had to fit him with, implants just so he could eat. And it's taken a long time. What a lot of these people have gone through is more than I think you or I could even imagine. So let's not forget them. And there's a lot of organizations there that you can look up and make sure that we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. And that's one of the things that Lance Corporal Rosario's mom said is, say her name, remember her name, and I think that's something all the Gold Star families would like. So Gold Star families, let's talk about them for a minute. If you don't know it, just a couple months ago, the Gold Star Families Memorial was dedicated in Berlin, Connecticut, and it's the only one in Connecticut. And Gold Star families are those families who have lost a loved one in combat. So it's really it's a beautiful tribute to the families, to the fallen. It's a great place where family members can go and reflect. They can just be at peace and just spend some time. So it's a wonderful tribute, and we commend and congratulate the team that raised the private funds to put that in place. And if you've not been out that neck of the woods, it's off of Route 9. It's in Berlin. There's a nice little park out there. So if you get a chance, you're looking for an outing, maybe when it's a little bit cooler than 95 degrees and hot, it's not a bad drive. But there's a number of monuments out there in Berlin. It's worth a nice little walk. They have a great little trail, and there's a place where you can sit down when you're done get something to eat and sit on the benches and just reflect, and in your heart say thank you for your service, thank you for your sacrifice, because that's what it's all about. We don't want to forget. There's just so much to talk about with our veterans, and I want to make sure we don't forget them in any way, shape, or form. So we said that August is an important month. So that was the difficult conversation about August, because this one is new and fresh. I also want to just put out a reminder that August 2nd, 1990 was the beginning of the Gulf War. And for those of you who were around, you remember, middle of the night, the bombing campaign started, and that's an example of how fast things can go. That war lasted 6 months, got in, did what we had to do, and all those folks came back to really, truly a hero's welcome, as they should have. And I think it was not only a tribute to all those who went to the desert, fought, did their job, came home, but it was also a reflection of what else we shouldn't forget. And we're going to come back on the other side, and I'll finish that conversation. Hey, welcome back, everybody. So we're going to go back and finish up this story as a salute to our veterans. And in the middle of summer, when we're out having a good time, I know it's hot, but even if we're out there, let's not forget our veterans. Not all of them get to go out and enjoy the weather, but this is a little bit of a taste of what it's like when you're out there in the military. So if you're hot, if you're saying this is rough out there, okay, put on a pair of boots, put on some nice camouflage utilities, put on about an 80-pound pack, and go out and hike for a whole long time. When I did some of my training, we did it out in 29 Palms, California, and this would have been a nice cool day. So when we're thinking about how hot it really is, think about those people that are serving our country in some really crazy places. Some are in the desert, some are in the jungle, and believe it or not, some are in up above the Arctic Circle. So we have people everywhere. So I'm going to get back and finish our story here and talk about a couple things, and I want to end up on a few things which are back to school items to talk about. So we were talking about the Gulf War. We were talking about how short that war was and how well it went. And when you look at that, it's really exciting from the perspective that everyone got on board with one goal in mind. We needed to stop the acquisition of Kuwait from Iraq. And over 38 countries came together, a coalition was formed, and even though only a small number of the people actually put boots on the ground, people did step up and commit. And a lot of times you can support an effort by perhaps not direct military, but helping with, an air base, or help with other types of assets, resources, material, things that you still need to win the day of that type of overt conflict. So why does that matter, and why is that important? Well, on any given day, most of us don't know this, but there are somewhere between 18 and 25 conflicts around the globe right now that are going on. We don't hear about them. Just because they don't involve us doesn't mean they don't happen. And if it wasn't for the fact that Ukraine and Russia were fighting, and Russia is one of our adversaries, we probably wouldn't even know about that. But there are a significant number of conflicts that are happening right now. They're happening in Africa, Asia, China area. They're everywhere. The amount of equipment that is out there on the secondary and tertiary markets is quite incredible. Other countries, there are 15 third world countries that now have over 1,000 tanks, 300 modern aircraft, not old junky junks, but modern aircraft. North Korea alone has 1 million people wearing the uniform, and North Korea has 3,000 tanks. So there's a lot of equipment out there. We hear North Korea doing saber rattling all the time, and we have a presence there. South Koreans are well prepared, but that's been going on since the 1950s. And even though the armistice was declared by the UN, we that is an area that we are prepared to happen, bubble up anytime. We can't forget about Iran. Back in the 80s, Iran took over our embassy and became a theocracy, and Iran has a 500,000 person army, 700 tanks, and almost 300 aircraft. So there are threats that we don't always see or talk about, but they're there. And the technology is one of the areas that it's growing by leaps and bounds. The different levels of technology, cyber securities, cyber communication, telecommunication is an area where I know our military is spending a great deal of time so we can see a threat that's coming before it gets out of control. So there's some good lessons there. But back to the Gulf War, because I think that's, if we want to look at a success story, we can say what went well and what didn't go well. I would say the Gulf War of 1990, 1991 went exceptionally well on a lot of fronts. The bombing campaign just didn't end. A lot of us don't remember, but at that time we still had in our fleet, in fact it was reactivated, and it was the USS New Jersey, a World War II battleship. And you think about that and you go, well, battleship's not going to make it in today's conflicts. Well, in 1991, the New Jersey sat off in the Persian Gulf and it fired its 16-inch guns. So the New Jersey has 9 16-inch guns. So you say, well, how big is that? So imagine a piece of steel about the size of a Volkswagen weighing 2,000 pounds, about that big. It's huge. Flying through the air, it's going to go about 36 miles over the horizon and impacting the ground. And a lot of the people who survived the war, a lot of the guys on the other side said that was terrifying. So when we actually crossed the line and the tanks went in, that's why so many surrendered so quickly. The bombing from the air, the bombing from the sea really took a toll on their nerves. So it really shook the earth, and it helped us have a very swift, successful ending. I want to talk about those veterans. So the Gulf War veterans are kind of unique because not until you have to go all the way back to World War II when veterans were honored and celebrated and appreciated to that level. And what was in the middle of World War II and the Gulf War is the Vietnam War. And because that war became unpopular, a lot of people turned against the veteran. They turned against the military people that are serving. And that's really unfortunate because, in the military, you go where you're told, you do what you're told, and it is the policymakers, it is the Pentagon, it is the people who put together the plan to execute whatever conflict we're facing. So there's a lot of veterans out there that served in Vietnam, and we salute you and we thank you. You did your part. You did what you were supposed to. A lot of us know a few people that are still out there from World War II, but most of them are gone. There's a number of Korean War veterans, and we appreciate what they did. So we're going to go back to the Korean War, which is back in the 50s, another difficult time period in that when the North Koreans crossed the 38th parallel and invaded, the UN went in and pushed them back where they belong, above the 38th parallel. But somebody had a brilliant idea. I won't tell you who. You can do the homework on that. But let's go all the way to, there's a little river called the Yalu River that separates North Korea from China, and they thought it'd be a great idea to go all the way to the Yalu River. Well, needless to say, again, you think back, this is 1950, 51, the communist Chinese didn't think that was a good idea because they had just been beaten up, from World War II, and they were just building up their military, and they weren't letting anybody come into China. So needless to say, they came in full force, supported the North Koreans, pushed us back down, and then we fought to that stalemate, which is now the 38th parallel. So a lot of folks in the Korean War, it's often called the Forgotten War. One piece of good news on that is 2 weeks ago, and I believe it was July 27th, they just unveiled, as part of the Korean War Memorial in Washington, D.C., a monument that recognizes all the fallen from the Korean War. So it's too bad it took so long, but I'm glad they got it done. That's a good thing, is to remember the fallen. If you've not been to Washington, D.C., you need to go down there. It's an amazing place to walk the mall. Not only the monuments that founded our country, but also to see the war memorials that recognize those who went before us in many, many wars, some popular, not popular, but those who were willing to sacrifice for what they believed in this country. So definitely worth a trip down there if you get a chance. Really, it's something to go see. I know a lot of people who go down there and they come back and they say, I have no idea. Pictures don't do it. Stop doing virtual. Stop doing it online. Go see it, live it, touch it, experience it. It's something that you will definitely remember. So again, I wanted to wrap up on the Gulf War, the folks that came back, and I remember that very clearly. My wife's a Marine. She was deployed, and it was just great to see all the people that served and got recognized for what they did. And the commitments were around the globe. A lot of people went to different places so other units could go into the Gulf area and do what they had to do. So we want to make sure that we recognize that. So we talked about a lot of different conflicts, and I hope that history looks back on what we did in Iraq and Afghanistan and say, we did our best to offer them freedom. We did what we could to give them the opportunity for liberty and to live free. But you can't make people want that, and you can't make people take hold of it. It's a value, it's an attribute that you have to grab, and you can't lose it. And it's really an important thing that we cannot ever forget. We have elections coming up here in a few months, and I would encourage everybody, don't put off any election. Yeah, it might be a little bit of an inconvenience. You may not wanna, and you may think, my time in the booth doesn't matter. Yes, it does. One of the most important things that we have in our country that most other people in the world don't have is that opportunity to go in, close the curtain, and put your mark on that piece of paper of who you want, who you think is going to do the job that you need to be done the way you want to see it done. And you don't have to tell anybody who you're voting for. You have to tell anybody who you're not voting for. I would encourage you, though, before you just go do that, do the homework. Don't watch the political ads. Do your homework. Look up what this person says about the other one, what the other one says about the other one, so you can see both sides. And if you have those core values, as was founded in our country, life and liberty. And remember, it's the pursuit of happiness. Our Constitution doesn't guarantee you happiness. It says, go find your happy. So go find your happy. And part of your happy should be, I want to vote for people who are going to let me be me and support me in what I want to do. Don't let somebody tell you what your happy should be, or where you should go, or how you should feel. You get to do that. I know when I went in the military, that's one of the things that I believed in strongly, is I wanted to serve. I felt with all the things that I had been given from this amazing country, I wanted to do some time back. And great experience, best thing I ever did, would do it again. And I would strongly encourage, in spite of what you hear out there, in spite of the things that might be going on, that you say, oh, I don't like this and I don't like that. Self-sacrificing for others is one of the best things you can do. We need to stop thinking about what makes us comfortable, what makes us happy, and what's important. Sometimes being uncomfortable and working hard for something for someone else is the greater good, the greater cause. But don't let politicians tell you what the answer is or what their greater good is. It's up to you to find your path. We all have core values. Go get those core values. Make sure those are foundational. If you've not read any of the founding documents, read them. It's a good way to make sure that what's in our heads and in our hearts are connected to the way we behave. because when we're connected to that, we're going to treat each other very nicely. We're going to respect each other. We are going to welcome others. And that's what makes our country great, is that we welcome others. But we have that core foundation, those core values, and that is what keeps our country growing and going strong. Politicians are very quickly and easily self-centered. And I'm not going to go after any one person or any party. It's just you need to make sure that the people you're listening to are really looking out for you in a way where they're not giving you free things, they're giving you freedom. Because I think the majority of people, the vast majority of people, are smart enough to make their own decisions. So let's hope we stay on that path, because I think that's a good way to go. I don't care what you want to be or who you are. I'm a big believer in go make your own choice and live with your choice. Yeah, we're all going to make mistakes, but let's not take it too harshly. So I think there's some primaries coming up next week. So if that involves you, go vote. And if you're around here in November, make sure you vote. Don't let anybody take your ballot, and don't go doing a paper mail-in ballot. Walk in there, look at your name, put a check by it, and go vote. It's a great way to spend 20 minutes of your time. Strongly encourage it. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit, because what else happens in August is we do back to school. It's coming around the corner. I know, and my head's still in summer vacation, and I'm not ready to give up summer vacation, but coming up real quick is going to be our back to school sales, our tax-free week where we can buy stuff for our kids to go to school. If you're a parent, an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, you're taking care of kids, there's some things I just want to bring your attention to. One of the things that is out there, in fact, it's just been released. There is a new program, and it's put out by the Connecticut Department of Public Health. It's called Launching into Healthy Learning, Fall of 22. So you can find this on the Connecticut Department of Education website. You can find this on the Connecticut DPH website. You probably even find it on your local Town Board of Education website. Now, this is some homework if you're responsible for a young student in the school system, any school system. Like I said, these are Department of Education guidelines that are coming out. So it's called Launching into Healthy Learning. It's respiratory disease prevention strategies for school. Listen up, here it comes. Child care and camps. So per the document, one of the goals is to help support in-person learning and child care. One of the big pushes here is for youngsters to get vaccinated. One of the vaccines they want you to get your child is the COVID vaccine. And I'm not here to say yes or no. What I'm here to say is read the fine print. Make sure you know what that means. Understand what it means, not just from any health official. Make sure you're talking this over with your health care provider. And there's a difference between health people like Department of Public Health. Your conversation should be with your health care provider. So let's just talk about a couple things that are really out there for children. So there's two vaccines that have been, now I'm listening carefully here, there's two vaccines that have been approved by the FDA. Now these are emergency use authorized. So you say, well, what's the difference? I thought they're approved by the FDA. Well, emergency use authorization means as a result of the pandemic, which has not been declared over, the FDA is allowed to say, we're going to rush this out to market, we're going to rush this out, and you can use it, and it's okay. But when you look at some of the data, and you can see this on the FDA website, you can see this on the CDC website, I've looked at all those sites, and I looked at the DPH website in what it says, and what should you do for your child? That's not my call, that's yours. That's between you and your pediatrician, you and your practitioner. It's real important that you take a look at the vaccines and what some of those side effects are. The study is not extensive, but they're saying that this vaccine, the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine, is authorized for ages 6 months to 4 years old. And for a vaccine that is not fully FDA approved, I think you need to have the conversation with your provider of health care. It's also approved in ages 6 to 11 and then 12 to 17. But I think it's important, folks, take a look at what the side effects are, what the long-term side effects are. Oh, never mind, they don't have those because it hasn't been out that long. Look at the short-term side effects and see what your risk tolerance is, because that's what it comes down to. You know, if you have a child that's at risk, then you know what decision you want to go to. If you have a child that's healthy and hardly gets sick, then you need to decide which way you want to go there. But these are the 3 websites I urge you to take a look at before you go and you sign off on the paperwork that's going to be waiting for you. Again, the DPH, Connecticut DPH, Launching into Healthy Learning. There's I think it's like a 2-page sheet on why they're supporting vaccinations. And this is all pro-vaccination, what they're looking for, and what they expect you to do. When you go to the CDC website, yeah, it's a little bit more technical, but I think it's pretty easy. The one site goes about a dozen pages, but if you scroll down, you can see some of the things that it says, what some of the side effects could be. What are the ingredients of the vaccine? Who should not get the vaccine? And then what are the risks? So make sure you know your child better than anybody else. These are your children. They're not the school's children. Your child is a student at the school. They're not their kids. So you, moms and dads, aunts and uncles, all you caregivers, you make sure that you know where your child is and whether or not this is the right answer. And it may be, and I'm not saying not to do it. I'm saying do it with your eyes open, with the facts in front of you, so when you do it, you know what to expect. So the other thing that is there, and some of you may have already signed this, when you go into the school, you get all your paperwork, you're going to fill out all these forms. Has your child done this? Have they had this? All that paperwork comes in. There's one little form that's in there, and you need to make sure you read it and you understand it and you're comfortable. And it says, I give the school permission to access my pediatrician in making healthcare decisions for my child. So if you do not want that to happen, if you want to make that decision, not the school nurse or some other provider in the school, for your child, then you say no. Any healthcare, any services that'll be provided, I want to be informed. So make sure you read it. If you're comfortable with it, go do it. If you're not, then make that decision too. So read your paperwork. School's around the corner, the paperwork's coming. Do what you need to do, but my one thing I would say is these are your children, and they are the students of the school. So you take care of your kids, because no one else can love them the way you do and protect them the way you do. I'm getting the hi-yo sign that we are out of time. So I'm going to say good day, friends and neighbors. Have a great one. Stay cool and stay safe.